Millions of Americans were watching live when Hillary Clinton leaned forward, her voice cutting through the studio like a blade. She did not wait for pleasantries. She did not waste a second on introductions. "Donald," she said, her tone sharp and deliberate, "you have lied to this nation, you have cheated its people, and you have betrayed the office you once held." The audience erupted instantly, some gasping, others applauding as the sheer force of her words electrified the air. For a moment, Donald Trump's face froze on the giant screen. The man who thrived on dominating every room, who prided himself on overpowering opponents with volume and bravado, sat still, lips pressed, eyes darting. Hillary's words thundered on. "You can dodge reporters, you can hide behind lawyers, but you cannot run from the truth when the American people are watching." The camera zoomed in on Trump. Silence. Not a retort, not even his trademark sneer. That silence became louder than any insult he had ever thrown. Commentators would later describe it as the split second that flipped the script of American politics. Clinton, once accused of being too measured, too cautious, unleashed her fury without a filter. And Trump, the showman who thrived on chaos, was suddenly without a script, sitting in a silence that millions interpreted as surrender. The moderator tried to interject, but the energy of the moment was already out of their hands. Hillary pressed forward, relentless, her voice steady, yet rising with each word. "For years, you mocked me. You mocked our institutions. You mocked democracy itself. But tonight, in front of the nation, the mockery ends." The audience felt it. The shift, the weight, the clash of 2 decades of rivalry boiling over on live television. This was no ordinary exchange. This was a reckoning. The broadcast was set up as a routine primetime debate, a staged confrontation between 2 of the most polarizing figures in modern American history. The moderators opened with their polished questions, trying to maintain order, but the atmosphere was already charged before the first words were spoken. Viewers at home could feel it. This was not politics as usual. Hillary Clinton had walked onto the stage determined, her years of calculated restraint stripped away. She had come prepared to confront the man who had haunted American politics for nearly a decade. On the opposite podium, Donald Trump sat with his familiar posture, shoulders back, chin raised, projecting confidence. But the tension in the room betrayed something deeper. Everyone knew this was more than a clash of policy. It was personal, visceral, a battle of reputations and legacies. The audience, a carefully selected mix of supporters, critics, and undecided voters, leaned forward in their seats. Their reactions became part of the drama. Gasps when Clinton's accusations cut deep, bursts of applause when her words landed like blows. The moderators tried to guide the conversation, but each attempt to steer the debate back to safe territory collapsed under the weight of the confrontation. Trump's silence, his refusal to immediately fight back, only magnified the sense of imbalance. Analysts on live feeds across the nation whispered that something extraordinary was unfolding. Social media timelines exploded in real time. Hashtags trended, clips of Clinton's attacks spread within seconds, and millions debated whether Trump's composure was strategy or shock. What should have been a structured exchange between 2 political veterans dissolved into raw conflict, broadcast live to the world. The stage was no longer neutral ground. It was a battlefield, and every word Hillary spoke pressed harder against Trump's stillness. Hillary Clinton did not hesitate. She listed names, dates, scandals, and controversies that had followed Donald Trump like shadows. "You took money from foreign interests. You turned the White House into your personal business. And you lied, Donald, over and over while Americans paid the price." Her voice rose, steady but fierce, as the audience reacted with a wave of gasps and murmurs. Trump opened his mouth as if to answer, but then closed it again. His silence stretched on, captured by every camera, dissected in real time by commentators who struggled to explain what they were seeing. This was the man who had branded himself the ultimate fighter, suddenly quiet, his stillness screaming louder than any insult. Clinton seized the pause. "You once said you could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose a single voter. But tonight you cannot even look the American people in the eye and defend your actions." The room erupted, some in applause, others in outrage, but the clash was undeniable. On Twitter, hashtags like #TrumpSilent and #ClintonStrikes backtrended within minutes. News anchors broke into programming with live analysis, voices shaking with disbelief at the one thing no one thought they would ever see: Donald Trump refusing to speak. Clinton pressed harder. When children were put in cages, you laughed. When allies turned their backs, you shrugged. When our democracy was attacked, you stood silent then, just as you are silent now. Each sentence landed like a hammer, the weight of her words amplified by Trump's refusal to interrupt. For his supporters, the silence was painted as strategy, an act of restraint. For his critics, it was humiliation, proof that he had finally been cornered. The divide spilled into living rooms, offices, and bars across America. Families argued, friends shouted, communities split down the middle. And still, on that stage, Hillary's voice dominated, while Donald Trump's silence carved a new scar into the political memory of a nation already fractured. The tension inside the studio reached a breaking point. Hillary Clinton leaned closer to the microphone, her eyes locked on Trump. The moderators tried to regain control, but no one was listening anymore. The audience had gone silent, sensing something historic about to unfold. Her voice dropped lower, sharper, every word delivered with precision. "Donald, you called yourself the voice of the forgotten. But what you forgot was the truth. You forgot the law, and you forgot the people who trusted you." Trump shifted in his seat, his hands gripping the podium, yet still he said nothing. The silence stretched like a canyon, swallowing every sound in the room. Then Hillary struck with her most devastating line. "You can insult me, you can smear my name, but tonight, before this nation, your silence tells us everything. You are guilty of betraying America, and you don't even have the courage to deny it." The audience exploded. Applause clashed with boos, cheers collided with shouts, but the decisive moment had already landed. Commentators watching live could hardly keep up, voices trembling as they declared this the most brutal confrontation of the decade. Trump's face hardened, his jaw clenched, but no words came. For a man built on spectacle, on controlling the narrative with sound and fury, the absence of speech was crushing. Clinton's final blow echoed beyond the stage, beyond the studio, into every living room across America. For the first time in years, Donald Trump was not the loudest voice in the room. He was the silence, and it was deafening. The debate ended not with a handshake, not with a closing statement from Donald Trump, but with a silence that reverberated across the nation. Hillary Clinton, steady and unwavering, delivered her last words with the force of a gavel striking down. History will remember this moment, because silence, when faced with truth, is not strength, it is surrender. The moderators thanked the candidates, but their voices were drowned out by the roar of the crowd. Some cheered Clinton's boldness, others shouted in anger, but all knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. Trump left the stage without a single attempt to counter the accusations. The image of his retreat became the headline, the replayed clip, the defining symbol of the night. Within minutes, television networks cut to panels of stunned analysts. "Did Donald Trump just concede defeat without a word?" one anchor asked. Social media platforms exploded with clips of the silent former president, memes spreading faster than the moderator's closing remarks. Hashtags like #SilentSpeaks and #ClintonCrush trended worldwide. For Clinton supporters, it was vindication, the moment she had finally shattered the myth of Trump's invincibility. For Trump loyalists, it was a bitter scene, defended with claims of strategy but tinged with doubt. For the rest of the nation, it was a mirror held up to America's divisions, a reminder that politics had become more than policy. It had become theater, spectacle, and raw power. The next morning, headlines across every major newspaper declared it in bold, "Clinton breaks Trump's silence." Editorials argued over whether his refusal to respond was tactical or catastrophic, but the public had already decided. Silence had spoken louder than any words he could have offered. And so the legacy of that night was sealed. Hillary Clinton's fury became history, and Donald Trump's silence became the echo that haunted it. The clash was over, but the message endured. In politics, words can wound, but silence can destroy.